What's that?
Oh no, I was doing Tool Time Tim thing.
Oh yeah, that's what I was thinking of. This is some very sort of From Software noises.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you pronounce ellipsis? Tom? Hello and welcome to episode 277 of the Crate and Crowbar. Here with me, Chris Thurston, to bang on about Sekiro for X number of hours is Tom Senior.
Hello.
And Alex Wiltshire.
Hello.
Hello. We'll get to that in a minute, I suppose. But we should do some news, I think, probably.
What is then? There is no news.
There's actually some news, and all any of us want to do is bang on about Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Or do they? They die a lot more than that in my experience. Yes. But we'll get to that news. Guess what? Sam Barlow, Her Story Man, he's announced his new game.
Sounds good.
It's called Telling Lies. And it looks sort of, from the description, structurally similar to Her Story, in that you use a more modern computer system to access an NSA database of footage of people. 4 people this time. In order to piece together a story by searching for keywords, which is the Her Story mechanic. But yeah, the trailer came out today. I just showed you both it.
It's a muscular
how
trailer.
How do I feel? It's a
Yeah, it's good, strong.
Very muscular.
What muscle?
It's the glutamus maximus.
I knew you were going to say this.
It's the one I couldn't remember.
The heart is a muscle, Alex, and the brain.
Yeah.
Could have been either of them.
True, yeah. Brain's the best muscle. 96 lies in this video game, we're told. Is it 96?
96 lies.
I do like a nice documentation of the number of untruths.
It's to preempt some very specific questions that will inevitably get at Gamescom. How many lies?
Absolutely. So lots more kind of confessional to camera stuff, but it seems to be mixed in with maybe some sort of found footage stuff as well, which is a bit new.
I think the setup is because it's like data that's been harvested on these people over the course of several years from different sources.
From their laptop cameras and whatnot.
Yeah, even their telephones, their snaps,
their
TikToks, their TikTok accounts, and so I don't know what any of these things are. Their Instagram stories, bad tweets.
That'd be really good. That story.
Their IRQs, maybe. IRCs.
Do you mean ICQ?
No, they interrupt. Oh, don't worry.
Okay, wow.
Let's forget that bit.
Okay. Google search history. That'd be a good thing.
Yeah.
They should mix it multimedia elements.
Yeah,
search levels tweets.
Really
oh wow, yeah. I mean, we've gotten entirely off Sam Barlow's probably excellent game here, but what if you had a murder mystery where you had to figure out who done it based on what, like, the Google algorithm knows about them?
What videos they've watched,
we think this person likes murder. The thing is, if it was like trying to find a murderer based on what YouTube recommends they watch, that wouldn't find literally nobody, because you watch 3 videos about, like, I don't know, Peppa Pig, and do you want to know more about Charles Manson is like the next thing that YouTube picks for you.
They're all guilty.
Exactly.
But, reams of gaffer tape on an Amazon order would be a good find in a hunt for a killer and stuff like that.
Oh, that would be good, wouldn't it? Like just all the internet records.
Yeah, like it's basically like Minority Report, but no one knows a fucking thing because everything about everyone, but in some ways nothing at all. I think we've gotten rather off track here.
Yeah, the game looks cool as far as that trailer suggests.
It feels really kind of native to the publisher Annapurna as well, as a kind of a film maker. Like, this feels like a game which can easily be made to speak to way outside of games, like the sort of thing that would fit on mobiles and TVs and stuff like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
And the talent as well.
Yeah, right, yeah. Her off Westworld, Storm from the new X-Men films. I can't remember what the dude was in. Actors.
Really, really, really well-known actors.
No, but it's only, I mean, that's the thing, is it fulfills this remit of, like, you wouldn't necessarily expect, a big, an ambitious escalation on her story, right? Like, you know, you're talking about what sequels to various games might look like, but it's a good idea. It's a really good format. Like, her story was a really successful story delivery mechanism.
And it's like, it's a game where that mechanic is super cool and like really surprising and exciting to first grapple with it. But like then once you've done that, like once the initial shock's over, you've got the story there and like you can make multiple of them and it just becomes about the story that you uncover. Like the mechanic is almost
right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's
in service to that really.
I'm surprised that mechanic wasn't imitated more actually, because it feels as adaptable as like the choose your own adventure format or something like that in terms of interactive fiction. It's really, really good.
It's really strong. And you know, it just takes hold of a mechanic that everyone understands, Googling something and turns that into the primary interaction. Like anyone can do that. It's great. Really cool.
Yeah. Probably missed a trick not calling it their story.
What's it called again?
Telling Lies.
Telling Lies. Okay. 96 lies.
Telling 96 lies.
I wonder if there'll be like there are blocks representing each bit of footage in her story, so I wonder if there'll be a block for each lie.
Yeah. It's 96 lies and one big lie. Okay. So like a boss lie.
Boss lie, nice. Yeah. Final lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah. So other video games, because it's been sort of a rush of sort of lunchtime announcements today, and I'm not sure what it was other than Wednesday.
Yeah, E3 seems to be starting earlier and earlier in terms of people keep on sort of getting out in front of E3.
Given that nobody's actually going to
March.
Right, yeah. It's March, which is nuts, but like, it's weird that so many different publishers decided to announce their games exactly this at 1 PM today for some reason. This Wednesday. Why?
I guess the financial year ends in a couple of days.
Maybe that's
that's a thing. Yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine that being too much of a factor in Telling Lies, but with other things, maybe it makes sense to get an announcement out before the end of the financial year. I don't know.
Because of financial aspects of things, like,
yeah. You know, because sometimes the money goes up and then sometimes it goes down.
Yeah.
You gotta catch it when it comes down, because it's like one of those, like, cloud platforms in Mario. This is how I understand the economy.
WASDAQ? NASDAQ? Them.
WASDAQ.
The numbers. Mason the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sometimes they go bad.
You need to grease them.
Yeah, you do. You got to make them greasy, or else they'll go wrong, and that's how you get the division. Not the product, the premise, but yeah. Maybe a little bit of both. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Other video games that were so one that was definitely already announced was Wolfenstein Youngblood, not to be confused with Wolfenstein The Old Blood, I think. Yeah, that's it. Yes, that was the first expansion. That was the first expansion for Wolfenstein The New Order, the prequel to Wolfenstein The New Colossus.
Oh, this is getting confusing.
Yeah.
Young, new, old.
Yeah, I think Tom Francis did a good tweet about this today. But yeah, I think, well, they have, young is at least a sort of synonym for new, so they are branching out.
Yeah.
They are branching out, between their narrow set of acceptable Wolfen nouns. But so the trailer came out, they'd announced, I think they announced this at E3 last year, actually. This is a Wolfenstein sequel being made by, Machine Games and Arcane, I think, in the sort of amalgamation of Bethesda, Cool Shoots, Craft, Studio. Again, I'm just getting rid of games.
Craftists.
But it is a co-op game set in the 80s where you play as BJ Blazkowicz's very angry twin daughters, which is a cool idea.
Yeah.
And the trailer's quite fun.
It's very fun.
Yes. Really good, loud, flashy shooting. I like the idea of, I'm not sure what co-op would bring to Wolfenstein really, and the trailer didn't really convince me that shooting lots of bad guys next to someone else shooting lots of bad guys is gonna generate any different experience to normal Wolfenstein, but it looks nice.
I hope what it does is mean they do shorter cutscenes.
Given their quality, I'm surprised that I totally agree with you.
I don't know what it's going to be like without seeing Blazkowicz's just big crying eyes, big sad sort of puppy dog eyes in it.
Well, that's what leads you through the story. You've got to see him.
You've got to see him at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
The boss eyes.
He is your dad now, and you've got to find him.
I kind of want him to be my dad in a game. Actually, I do like that idea for some reason.
Your actual dad
I don't know why.
Yeah,
and also that maybe. I don't know.
I think it's a nice. Also,
have his square jaw. It'd be great.
A nice development on the sort of long running. We've had a lot of games, the years and years of typically console kind of first party experiences where you are the gruff dad trying to shepherd your child into a dangerous post-apocalyptic or sort of broken world. And I do like the idea of finally subverting that. And now you're the kids trying to find dad, trying to find big dad, your massive dad. Which is actually a really great Sekiro segue that we're not going to have to do. Because your dad in that is huge.
Yeah.
We'll
get
he?
onto that stuff. Yeah.
Good. That's good to know.
Yeah. Oh, you're past that point.
What?
Yeah.
Huh?
Anyway.
I've never met a dad.
Well, you sort of have.
Oh.
He's in the opening cutscene.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll get to this. We'll get to this.
Dad stuff.
The other thing, I don't know if we want to talk about it, is they basically announced Borderlands 3 today with a trailer.
What do you mean, basically?
Because I think it's getting announced at PAX this weekend. So by the time this pod goes out, it might actually have been announced. Today they did one of them, sort of like pan around some stuff, teaser trailers, that just establishes a Borderlands thing is coming. But everyone's expecting Borderlands 3. It's been rumored for a while. It's sort of been expected that it'd be the thing Gearbox did next. Yeah.
Did you give a sense of the visual style?
Not at all. The video they put out looked a lot like the intro to, do you ever watch Black Sails?
Yes.
The pirate show?
Yeah.
You know, that sort of, there's a particular style of modern TV intro, the Westworld / Daredevil / sort of like,
The old,
moody shots of a static object. It's either moody HBO TV show opening or Avengers credit sequence. Those are the two formats for like, let's pan, in a sort of dramatic way around a statue. Or an object. Let's really get into the grain of a piece of fucking boat.
Yeah.
Look at it.
My favorite is American Gods, which is a total ball where each section is represented by one of the modern gods, and it's just this neon, magnificent, beautiful monstrosity.
So I really hate that intro.
Oh, really? Why?
Because it doesn't fit the anything in the actual series.
But all
I know it represents the gods.
The aesthetic of the gods is carried into
but it's like there's no neon.
But that's the only reason why you watch the show is for how the gods are represented, how they look.
No, that is
true. Show's kind of nonsense otherwise.
It is very nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah, any excitement for a bordering lands?
Yes. I'm really excited about it. Yeah. I am actually, because
Tom, you like to loot.
I like the loot, because it was just Diablo, but it's a shooter. And also the rules around the loot generation were so loose that you'd get genuinely surprising stuff, even though the trade-off is the guns didn't feel like amazing to fire compared to like a dedicated shooter with, pre-designed.
It could be though, like when you've got a nice one, you'd really treasure it, even when it got, going back to an old conversation we had weeks ago, like that was a game where you could really treasure a gun because it felt nice, even though the stats were way down.
Yeah. It's fun character powers. We used to have had like a Raven that did stuff to people. I can't remember really, it was ages ago. But yeah, also I think it's emerging in a really interesting place where loads of stuff has been quietly influenced by Borderlands without anyone really talking about it. And the fact that, the Division and Destiny and stuff like that, they kind of have roots in the Borderlands structure.
They do, yeah.
And so it'd be very interesting to see like how the conversation between all these games unfolds and what Borderlands 3 is going to do to kind of respond to Destiny and the Division and that type of looter shooter. Because now it's a full-on
particularly
genre.
It's like since Borderlands 2, it's been a completely change of the kind of the game model kind of landscape. So I'd be surprised if it doesn't end up being
games as a service, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great fit for a service type game for sure. And that, it'd be interesting to see if that alienates the core fan base who enjoy it as just a very dedicated co-op shooter that lasts for 40, 50 hours.
Although, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how it spins, because it's quite sort of big on story, isn't it? So it'd be interesting to see how they spin that around such a concept.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's in a really good position because it's also Borderlands art style translates very well to today when colourful, free-to-play games are pretty much making the most money in the world in terms of Fortnite and Apex and stuff like that. Borderlands art style and appeal will fit directly into that landscape, and it still has its own identity. As annoying as it is, it's got its sense of edginess that is whatever. It's sometimes funny and sometimes it's great for me, but that's an identity. It has more than like perhaps the Division has going for it, for example, in that respect. So I'm actually really excited to see what.
It's kind of funny thinking about how much it was aped by other things. Actually, like that decision, because I believe with the first Borderlands, the decision to cell shade it and make it so colourful was quite late in development. Like it was an art style change, which is really interesting. And it was very forward thinking because it wasn't at a time when that was what shooters looked like necessarily. But yeah, that sort of sci-fi Mad Max, sort of wasteland chic kind of thing with cool music and everyone's got cool hair is like, Yep, that was Fortnite before Fortnite. Like, it's Apex for it. You know, there's
it's
that art style.
Rage 2. Like, it's in so much stuff actually. Like, loads of stuff that owes a debt to Borderlands. And those games were really good because they were much bigger than the shooters you were buying at the time. They really over delivered on. If you've got friends that wanted to consistently play it with you, those games are enormous. They're massive, and you can keep on running them and getting loot. And you know, it was They were ahead of their time in their own way. And it's interesting to think about in terms of. What was the Gearbox's last game? It was a disaster.
Battleborn,
which is just unbelievably bad for me.
Yeah, I thought it was terrible.
And you always get the sense that A-Team is always on Borderlands in some way. So I'd like to see what Gearbox could really do, you know, in a
modern right. Well, Gearbox is such a hot and cold studio,
yes,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I think it went, it was Borderlands 1, Aliens Colonial Marines, Borderlands 2, Battleborn, Borderlands 3.
Yeah, right. So hopefully we're on the up here. That's
There's
good.
a pattern emerging.
It's like Star Trek films.
Yeah, it's either like Star Trek films and that every other one is good, or it's the Borderlands games are good.
And that's what they really want to make. And that's their property,
yeah.
but you know, they own. Well, they own Battleborn as well.
Yeah. And maybe this is by the time this pod comes out, hopefully they'll have shown something. But yeah, I think the thing they need to do for me to compete, particularly with Destiny, I wasn't a huge fan of the Division, is feel. Like, they have to make it, you know, because I think the one thing they got away with because they were innovating so much was it being a bit ropey as a shooter. Yeah. Occasionally, like, you're not shooting people, you are hosing them down with, like, the numbers hose until they fall down.
I suspect that that's part of its kind of, sort of, identity though. I mean, like, so, you know, because also the Destiny thing is these kind of incredibly honed, kind of designed encounters, like mega contrived kind of sort of specialized things. Whereas, you know, with Borderlands was very much about, well, we're going to give you shitloads to do, but it's all kind of the same. And you kind of, it might not work.
Yeah, there's a lot of old school bullet sponge bosses and stuff like that, which in the wake of stuff like Destiny's raids,
it's interesting. Like that stuff felt really anymore. Surprising and weird at the time, but now it's just totally normalized.
Yeah, for sure. Right, yeah. There's a lot of stuff about Borderlands. Like, we're working on loads of retrospective features and just finding loads of stuff in there that has been quietly lifted by other developers and is surprisingly on trend. So yeah, I'm excited to see how it's evolved.
Yeah. I want to talk about Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. So a bit of a caveat before we start. I don't think any of us have played anything else this week. Tom, I know you lost your entire mind.
Yeah. But in a good way.
And congratulations on finishing it. I think that's a genuine accolade to be in the first generation of a group of people to play any fun stuff again.
His review, by the way, which is very good.
Yes. Spoiler alert, but I gave it 92 out of 100. Points on the completely objective scale review.
Yeah, that's 92 lies.
Oh, there's some good boss lies in Sekiro.
Yeah, there's some very big boss lies.
It's fucking fantastic.
And I've played about 23 hours of it now.
Yeah. And you can look out for some really insightful points of view from me because I've played about 1.5 hours.
No, I think you played a little bit more than that.
Maybe
fast progress, but yeah.
I didn't die. I was so good at it though that I didn't.
Just a natural shinobi.
Yeah. That's what we've always thought about you. Yeah. No, I mean, deadly. Always a on point counter. There he is. He's wrecked my posture. But also from a spoiler point of view, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. We're not going to spoil stuff, I think, but we will talk about.
We'll do our best.
We're going to talk about, avoid spoiling specific things. But I would like to, I personally would like to talk about, you know, the surprising scope of it and how it kind of grows and how it feels like a From Software game, which is, you know, means talking a little bit about themes and mechanics as the game develops, but avoiding specific spoilers, I think, past the first couple of hours.
I saw so many headlines from some outlets that were just like, this isn't Souls, it's a whole new thing. I was like, you haven't done it. You haven't played it all, have you?
It's a Souls game. If you can make a friend and they say something, if they say like, hello, yes, it is sad. Would you like some rice? And you say, yes. And they go, sorry. And they give you some rice. That's a From Software game. That is like the purest form of interaction. You know, and it has that in abundance in terms of strange interactions with.
Yeah, but the monsters talk in this one. Like, it can't be a
Why
Souls
can't we
game.
talk?
Because you listen to the people you kill.
Yeah. Well, the
They say
monsters
stuff.
in Bloodborne, they would explain the way in which
that's
the
true,
town was
actually.
finished all the
That's
time.
It's very true. Yeah, they were quite chatty in Bloodborne for sure.
And actually, to be honest, a lot of the eavesdrop conversations in Sekiro come down to the town being finished in some way.
It's what From Software are obsessed with. Every world is crumbling.
Every town is finished. Is being in the process of being finished.
For sure.
And then sometimes it's your job just to make sure the town ends.
Just put it out of its misery.
Yeah,
Really.
exactly. Won't someone death blow this town? Oh man, I don't know really where to start with this. So I would say, maybe just initial impression stuff, but like off the bat, easily game of the year for me so far. And I'd be amazed if anything's better because it's so fucking good. To the extent that, I had, as people, podcast listeners will know, kind of agonized about my relationship with Devil May Cry 5 which is, I think, a good game, but things I really don't like about it, and frustrations and all this stuff. And then this other game comes along where you're a one-armed swordsman with a massive dad, and it's
so weird, the similarities between those two games as well.
Yeah.
So I reviewed Devil May Cry 5 and then reviewed Sekiro, and they're such interesting games to put side by side because their combat systems, I love them both almost equally, but they just have very different core fantasies that are beautifully expressed. So Devil May Cry 5 is about expressing yourself, it's about improvisation, it's about showing off, basically. And then Sekiro is about just raw survival. And those two core, and the fantasies of the combatants in both those games are so different that I enjoy them both equally. But they both ruined third-person combat systems for me this year. Nothing else is going to do that as well as these games, I don't think. So I can't go back and play The Witcher 3. I was planning to do a Witcher 3 playthrough and do some DLC and stuff.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Like having come off this, how sharp it is and how exciting and how high stakes the combat is. Just rolling around and flapping at stuff, it just isn't going to do it anymore. It's properly reset the bar for me for like what I expect from it.
But there's also like, Dark Souls was always just a little bit sort of scrappy, you know, like it's sort of the way that a sword could kind of extend through a wall, and there was a sort of a looseness to it that you could use and sometimes be used by. There was an inexactness which only experience could kind of excuse, because I saw people kind of really bounce off that stuff and sort of like, this is shoddy, but clearly it wasn't. But this is fucking honed, like. There's not been as technically masterly constructed a game from that studio, I don't think.
No.
It's like the combat system, they've not done anything mechanically as good as the way that works. And to explain it, actually, just to give an overview, if you've not played it yet, enemies have health bars, but they also have posture bars, and you have this as well. And the most important of those two is the posture bar most of the time, because if you max out the posture bar, you get a red reticle appears in the enemy chest and you get to instantly kill them with your cool katana. The health bar, affects the rate to which the posture bar regenerates. So by wounding people and getting cuts here and there, you more, quickly build up a posture bar for being good at that. But it's always about that, it's about the killing blow. And it's, for a game about swords, it's what I've always wanted from a combat system. That it's not about just chipping down till an enemy is down to like 1 point of health and then getting a quick slash off and then they just literally fall over of their own accord. This is about finishing it, getting an opening, and there's a whole rhythm, really subtle kind of almost initiative system built into it that revolves around parries and counter parries and certain special attacks and ways that you get around those as well. And that means that combat is really fast. You can never ever take more than like 2 or 3 hits. And the rules of the system are taught to you in the first hour, and the game never deviates from those rules. It's consistent throughout the game, where you're fighting bosses, and they'll get tricks here, there'll be kind of weird status effects you might see, but the fundamental parry, fill out posture bar, death blow, is just like sacred throughout the entire game.
That sense of lethality is just so, it can make you feel miserable because you're on the receiving end of it, and then you can feel sort of the best thing in the world.
I think a really vital thing as well is that there are attack archetypes that are also consistent no matter what you're fighting. And so, and this is partly because I think at its basic level, the game is sort of it has a sort of, a magic realist style, like a lot of the Souls things, but it's far much less obviously a fantasy world at first than, and there are things about it that are, it's obviously, it's, you know, I think the other thing we should say is it's the first one that's set in it's a specific era. So it's Sengoku, it's late Sengoku era feudal Japan. It's, in I think a fictional area of Japan and during a sort of, fictionalized war, but it's got trappings of real culture and history, right? People are Buddhist in it. You know, you know, it's the first From Software game that is not in a total fantasy world. And as a result, a lot of the enemies you fight early on are, apart from the massive chickens,
and
the gnome, the little gnome.
No, I mean, they're human at the end of the day. Like, they're just weirdos. Well, that's the thing. It's like, you fight a lot of like, sort of, I guess, sort of grotesque people, but they're people, and they fight with spears and swords and things. There's a little bit less weirdness. It'll get there. But like, and the thing it teaches you pretty early on, as well as all of the sort of fundamentals of combat, is that like, you've got sweep attacks, thrust attacks, and these, are telegraphed in a particular way. And so unlike Souls or Bloodborne traditionally, where those telegraphs are probably need to be relearned for every single enemy type. You still need to do a bunch of learning for enemies, but certain aspects of its vocabulary are now consistent across. Even when it gets kind of wild later on, you start getting, you know, sweep equivalents, and the answers to those things remain the same. So a sweep attack, you have to kind of jump over it, and you can chain a jump into a jumping kick, which does extra posture damage if off a sweep attack and that kind of thing. And as soon as you really internalize this stuff, it gets really satisfying, to the extent that I think the thing I realized about it is I immediately found it like quite a lot easier than Souls, which I don't know if that's a universal experience. I've seen people say the exact opposite. I think I've seen people who really, and I would say that like I was only ever like people have watched a lot of me failing at Bloodborne, like only ever average at these games, but I've played a shitload of sword fighting games. I played Blade Symphony really seriously. I played For Honor seriously for a long time, played Absolver pretty seriously, and it reminds me so much more of those games, like fighting games, than it does, even though it's the structure it fits into is very, very From Software and very Souls. The rhythm of, you know, in a competitive fighting game or a competitive 3D sort of sword fighting game, you don't wait for your opponent to attack, dodge sideways, and slap them on the bum, which is the Dark Souls way of killing anything, really. Yeah. Right? You have to get the parry opening, and you have to learn those counters and actually do it. You know, you can't rely on, gaming it beyond a certain point, and it feels a lot like that. And the payoff for that is when you really internalize. So it forces you into learning the kinds of things that you could sometimes just get away with not learning in Dark Souls, like actual counters. Like good Dark Souls players or PvPers would be constantly countering everything properly and setting up the critical hit riposte stuff. But most people would get through the game without having to really internalize those techniques. This one, you have to, like, that is the game, is internalizing that. But the rewards for doing it are much greater because even successfully countering a blow at the right time does posture damage. So rather than it being like the counter means I now get to do some damage, the counter itself is the same as hitting someone. Yeah. You know, it's like, and that is the thing that pulls it into fair territory, I think, away from being just harder Dark Souls. And it feels so good. I saw someone else make this comparison today on Twitter, but it occurred to me. I did a boss fight that initially seemed impossible, and then it's a 2-stage boss fight, which it likes to do sometimes. And, and it's against a human swords person, but, there's like rapid flurries of attacks and things. And as soon as you learn the cadence of those attacks and you're perfect countering every single blow, it goes from feeling like, what the fuck is this? Dodge roll to the side, dodge roll to the side, dodge roll to the side, get out of the way, to that attack becoming like, this is an opportunity. And if that person's vulnerable and you counter everything, you've just taken a boss that feels really intimidating and turned their own attacks into something you're feeding back at them. And in that moment, you feel like fucking Daigo Umehara or something. Like, the Daigo full parry Street Fighter moment. It's a famous Street Fighter competitive, the full parrying the counter. Yeah, I've seen the video. That's Sekiro, basically. It's like parry every attack and then do one thing and win. And it's fucking, I've just spoken for 5 minutes, but it's fucking great.
It's great. There's such an interesting conversation going on between, Dark Souls and Bloodborne and this game, between those games and its fans. And I find it really interesting to see how Sekiro achieves a lot of what Bloodborne wanted to achieve through just better design. And the main thing, the way it does it, so Bloodborne wants players be more aggressive. So it puts in this regain system where if you take damage, you can get that health back by attacking. Whereas Sekiro dumps that, but says there is no stamina bar. And instead we have this posture system. So you're not limited in how you can attack. You could be proactive at any point in the fight when you're not being comboed against. And in fact, even as Chris says, when you're being comboed against, you could be proactive in that by just deflecting and by countering effectively. So the fight is always happening. You're not behind a shield waiting for a bar to recharge. And you're not like being forced to go in there to get health back. The fight is constantly happening in a combat in Sekiro in a way that it isn't in Bloodborne necessarily. Just like enemy types, there's bits of Bloodborne in some of the enemies you fight. A lot of the sort of beast enemies make it into certain enemies in Sekiro, and there's you just see like echoes of the ghost of Dark Souls fights come into some of the boss fights. And I think the starting point it feels like for a lot of the encounters you have in Sekiro is actually the Maria fight in Bloodborne's DLC. Which is just one-on-one, and it's you versus just a master swordsman who has, some extraordinary abilities. But those fights are just, electric in this game. Where you're just like lining up against another martial artist, and some of them, like the one amazing guy is it a sword master, but he also has this enormous bow that you can just like whip off his back.
That's the fight I was talking about.
Yeah, and it's like, it feels electric to be just facing off against an opponent that's just more capable than you are, but in a recognizable way. It's not like doing magic at you all the time. It's just a guy with a sword who's amazing, and the combat system sustains temps back and forth, and a fight that will last 20 minutes that you end up just totally wired. Like, I'm just like, adrenaline is going, forcing myself to keep calm because I know that the death blow is so close, and like my hands are sweating, and and then afterwards you breathe a sigh of relief, and all of the kind of catharsis that you get from Dark Souls victories over tough bosses are really good, like condensed in those death blows, because that is the moment where it's just, you fucking do it, and the animation always celebrates the violence of the moment spectacularly, and it feels amazing. There's some of the best boss fights to me in the history. And
the thing it does, I think expresses some confidence is, I think compared to Dark Souls, it's much more generous with runbacks to boss fights.
Yes, definitely.
So we should say that, it is a Souls structure game. In terms of its overall structure, you are finding, sculptors' idols, which are bonfires, basically. And, you have that same rhythm of, having this huge environment and learning how it fits together, and how you're finding routes from places to places and opening doors and unlocking all these routes and things. The difference is you don't have souls or that kind of thing. You also don't have loot really in quite the same way. You do, but it's not, you are a swordsman and you have one katana for the most part, and the gadgets, and you are not choosing to be, you're not leveling up in that way, you're not putting points into vitality to have a bigger bar or anything like that. There are upgrades, but they are much more kind of chunky. Instead, you have money that you gain from killing people, basically, and then hoovering into yourself, which is a very good mechanic. All your money's mine now. Button, and you gain XP, but when you've leveled up, you get skill points that you then put into skill trees that you move through and unlock as the game goes on.
And then when you die,
you
probably lose a chunk of...
Right, yeah. When you die, you probably lose half of both. That's kind of the way it works. You lose half your current XP and half your current money.
But your XP, it's only the bar. Like any experience, like every time your bar fills, you get an experience point, which you can then invest in your skills. But they once you've earned that, that's permanent.
Yeah, so once you banked one of those skill points, you have it forever. But the progress to the next skill point is hard. So first of all, that's just not punishing in the way that Dark Souls or
there's no run back either. There's no getting it back. So.
No, there's none of that, and it's fine to lose money. It's fine to lose that skill stuff. Really, like but fundamental design change that's happened here is that you can't grind for power. You just can't, and that is huge. Like that's a massive change in the way the entire game is structured, because you can design encounters around a predictable player power level, just numerically, the amount of damage and the amount of kind of posture damage you can do. And for me, that must have been a big part of why a lot of these boss encounters are so satisfying, is because they know that you can only have so many strength upgrades. You only have so many, health upgrades, because you can only have discovered so many prayer beads by this point.
Right, yeah.
And that can only have helped them hone the most intense combat encounters. And also I think it stops players from sometimes ruining the game for themselves, in the way that repeatedly running areas in Dark Souls some people find it kind of like relaxing and meditative, but actually, for people who are stuck, that's the way out, is to grind and to put loads of hours into doing that without actually engaging with the game systems. And removing that is actually kind of, I think there are arguments. I kind of disagree with myself a little bit, but I think for me that's better because you're focusing players to engage with the core fantasy, the core experience, which is the core.
I do think that is part of the reason why I've seen few people bouncing off it. I love the Dark Souls games, but I bounced off this, and I think it's because they feel powerless because they're having to play by the game's rules.
Yeah. Do you think that like Losing Souls and Gathering Souls and Blood Echoes, they're incredibly thematically important to those games. So, and also the moment of despair, like Dark Souls despair is built into its world and its mechanics equally. And I wouldn't necessarily want to go back and just put Sekira's combat system in there because I think it would undermine a lot of what creates the Dark Souls is much more of a horror game than Bloodborne is as well. And this is a very different fantasy, and they've just designed a system I prefer to support it.
Right. Yeah. And interesting to talk about theme a little bit because I think it's not to say that they've abandoned the theming, abandoning the system. It has a very different sort of set of ideas.
Yeah.
And it's a really, I think it is very much a kind of, of a conversation with those. I don't want to get too deep into this because I think it bears a bigger discussion, but just on the point of upgrade currency, like the thing about, who you are, Wolf in Sekiro, or Sekiro, the one-armed wolf, basically. Well, you're not one-armed at the beginning of the game, minus spoilers. You are super capable. It's not quite the kind of Pilgrim's Progress thing of Dark Souls where it's like, what the hell is going on? Where am I? And why is everything so scary? Nor is it the Bloodborne thing of like, what is this sort of nightmare world I've stepped into where I feel completely alien? You have much more obvious connections to the people and this world. You belong there. You're a shinobi ninja.
People know you even.
People know you. And you're super capable. Like, you are, you begin the game in the sort of traditional From Software sort of like, I'm sad in a well position. But you are very, very capable. The question is, I think, the core of the game is like, what does it actually mean to have that power and how do you responsibly use it to some extent? And, a thing about, and it is in the same way that it is in Dark Souls incorporated into the story that you cannot die. In fact, there's a mechanic we haven't mentioned, which is resurrection, which is you get 2 lives in any one life, really. Potentially more, depending on other systems. But when you die the first time in a given run, you can get back up again. And then it's the second one that kills you, usually. And that is built into its story. About who you are and why you are. And so the idea that you're this sort of like, in some ways, kind of scary figure yourself, this sort of, phantom whose progress is somewhat inevitable, is a big part of its theme in an interesting way. So it doesn't make sense to punish you in quite the same way. But one thing I do like about it is I remember, Tom, when we were doing the Bloodborne playthrough, we were talking about the kind of the, I've completely forgotten healing vials. What are the health items in Bloodborne called?
They're vials, blood vials. You just inject yourself with blood.
Yeah, but you're having to grind for them because you want to have your limit for, there's a version of that and it was interesting talking about the reason for that, right? Like that I saw a good, Tamor Hussein wrote a really good preview of Sekiro, or like a first impressions of Sekiro for GameSpot. I think he is someone who really, really gets these games and how they work. And, I saw a good tweet from him as well, sort of pointing out how a similar system works in Sekiro. But the purpose for having that be a consumable that you have to farm is so that you ultimately don't rely on it. It's to kind of teach you, again, these games always feel like they're trying to teach you how to play them and fight. And over the course of this whole series now, several Dark Souls games were born, and there's teaching you to try and engage with the systems. And so telling you this is a consumable, you can farm to get a healthy stock of them, but try not needing them is kind of the lesson. It's the reason they experimented with taking what was previously like regenerating Estus and making it this consumable. Health regen, your gourd, your ever replenishing gourd is, now back to being a thing that regenerates when you rest for important reasons.
That's just better as well. The
equivalent of, Bloodborne's health bars is, spirit notes, which are basically currency. I love what these actually are. They're essentially like tokens that you need in order to use certain special abilities, but most importantly, your gadgets. We haven't really talked about gadgets. You have a prosthetic arm, which can be initially like a shuriken thrower, then a spear, an axe, a big fan, some feathers.
Flamethrowy thing.
A flamethrowy thing. There's a lot of things it can do. And in order to use it, you need these tokens, which if you're playing well and kind of making progress, you'll end up with vast amounts of them. And then if you get stuck on a boss for a long time, you may end up running low. But what they basically are, and I love this, is apology notes. They're basically little sort of like, sorry. And so you can use your special gadgets and tricks and things, but only if you've written like several pre-written apology notes to the person that you've just eviscerated.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's really, really good. But it serves the same purpose of telling you which systems are things that you should be focusing on and which things are sort of like garnish. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, those, it does feel like those, so there's no summoning, there's no multiplayer in this game, which is a big change from previous games. And summoning was often the crutch that people relied on. Whereas actually those notes are actually the crutch that you use in this game. But you can acquire them by spending money. They drop from enemies. There are items you can consume that will increase the drop rate of those enemies if you want to kind of go and farm it. But yeah, so for example, a good early example of this is the red-eyed ogre that is a guy you find who's chained up, and he hates fire. So if you have the fire prosthetic, you can get a flinch out of it and a few extra hits. But I hadn't discovered the fire thing by then, and it's a tough fight, but you can completely capably beat that boss without the thing. And that's true of a lot of boss fights where the prosthetics are sometimes hard counters to certain types of enemies, but mostly they're just shortcuts, where if you really can't do this big ape, then here's a thing that might help you a little bit with it. But it's not the answer. Like, it doesn't auto-kill bosses. Apart from the axe.
And again, crucially, like, those rules tend to be consistent. So, red-eyed enemies don't like fire, is the thing.
Right.
Beasts, however that's defined. When we talk about beasts in this game, it's more often than not, real animals, but too big. Is a running theme. Don't like, loud noises. So you have a firecracker prosthetic that, you can use, and it works just as well as against regular size wolf as it does against real big cow. And like that's, a sort of, and that's really rewarding because it's rather than being like, I've done this boss for ages. And because, because there's no multiplayer, there's also no messaging system. There's no sadness but hooray for skeleton. There's no, try this, which is the old Dark Souls method of getting players to talk to each other. In this, I think, I know I want to have a conversation with Tom about some things. You could talk to your friends or look at a guide to get information, but it's also a lot fairer in that you can intuit what might work based on what your opponent is. And so things, that, you just, experiment and the systems link together in a way that feels a bit less arbitrary than some of Dark Souls is kind of like, this works here type of stuff.
And even just down is less arbitrary than, for example, parry windows for Bloodborne enemies.
Yeah, right.
Which is, a thing you just have to sort of try and error figure out. Whereas parrying is just a core part of Sekiro, but it's when the thing is about to hit you. The parry window is.
Well, the audiovisual feedback is so much more clear.
Yeah.
Like in Bloodborne, you're looking at like a flurry of feathers and sort of bits of cloth fluttering about in front of you. Like,
yeah, and the visual language in Bloodborne is a lot more subtle, and it's probably, I think it would put you off parrying at all throughout that entire game, because Father Gascoigne is the first big test in Bloodborne, and there are certain moments you get to recognise when a thing rears up. There's a slight slowdown as they rear up, or if they raise a weapon, there's a slight slowdown before they bring it down. That's probably a parry window in Bloodborne, but it's much, much sloppier than Sekiro. And also the animation in Dark Souls, the sort of vague wave of a shield that is the parry. Like again, where is the parry point?
Right,
and Sekiro cleans all of that up completely. Like, to the extent of actually it flashes up symbols above your head when a special attack is coming in from the enemy. And I'd rather have that than the kind of guesswork that was involved.
It can be a dick sometimes, but actually I've realized there's one instance, there's an enemy with a spear that, it's just one of the mini bosses, but, that caused me a problem for a while. And it was when I realized that he had two attacks that looked really similar. One of them was a thrust and one of them was a special attack. So it's, I think maybe, I don't know if the symbol is different. But, it's a very subtle difference in animation. One of them is like a sort of like, it's actually like a spear uppercut, but it really looks like a thrust at first. And there's a special thrust counter that doesn't work against the other one. So I found that really frustrating for ages, because I was like, why is this counter?
Yeah.
A deflect would actually work against either if timed properly, but the good counter for thrusts wasn't working because the animations were so similar. And eventually I figured it out. And then I realized after figuring it out, hang on, this is how Bloodborne feels all the time. Like, you know what I mean? This one fight where this, cause normally like, the symbol might appear, but it's really clear from the animation, oh, they're going for a sweep, not a thrust because of the way they're moving. And sometimes you screw up and you respond to the symbol without actually looking. But that's on you. You know what I mean? You didn't read the cue properly, so you did the wrong thing.
Yeah, enemy wind-up animations, like, they can last like half a second, but they're very telling in terms of like whether it's going to be a sweep, but the weapon will go out wide rather than being held under the body, ready for a thrust. Yeah. And the thrust counter is fucking brilliant. I think it's called the Mikiri counter or something. He just steps on their sword, just like, it treads it into the ground, and it just feels amazing. Yeah. It looks so awesome. You're rewarded with an enormous boom noise.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, big posture damage. And it's often you get a death blow.
Like, there's a boss I just did, again, no spoilers, is basically just a full on, it's very, very hard. It's, so the other thing is, I think we didn't mention is, bosses tend to have, in addition to health and posture, bosses have like a number of death blow pips, basically. And, I really love this system because it means that sort of ultimately death blows are the only health that matters, but it's how you get to the death blow. Do you get to the death blow by whittling away all their health? Do you get there by countering brilliantly so their posture bar gets all the way up? That's not always possible. And
you can like, there's an amalgam of both where you chip down health so their posture.
Yep. Yeah, so on average fight, yes, it's an amalgamation of both. But the thing that's really cool about this from a design point of view is it allows individual types, enemy types, to be tweaked between one or the other. So, the example I'll give you, I won't say what it is, but it's a boss that only has one death blow pip, but whose health is really quite hard to get down. And, you don't chip it much. But whose attacks are like, even with, I think the maximum number of upgrades I could have had at that point, half a health bar every time something connects, and the attacks are pretty constant. And so that fight isn't actually that hard. Initially, like, what the f is this? I'm being hit all the time, 2 hits and I'm dead, and my hits aren't doing basically anything. And like a full health boss doesn't take posture damage very much. But the whole fight is an exercise in just parry everything. Just don't mess up once, and then all it takes is one really good run and you've got them.
That's the interesting thing. The more they attack you, the more windows they give you to actually deliver them posture damage.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it though, that fight has a theme. And the theme is like, you don't have to get this health bar down twice. You don't have to go for the chip damage necessarily. This is just learn the pattern. And that might get tiresome if every boss was like that, but then you go to a different boss and it's completely different because the dynamic is slightly different. Like, maybe they take chip damage much more easily. Yeah. But you've got 2, things there, or some state change during the fight, or some other mechanical change, and
Yeah, and some of them are dodge fights as well, so dodging is still a big part of the game. So, and sometimes the best way to punish an enemy is to dodge, and you get a different attack coming out of the dodge that does extra posture damage. So that's a different way of attacking the posture bar. And I love the interplay between health bars and posture bars, and the way that allows for different types of fight is exploitative for what it seems the maximum potential. And it's the reason why that combat system can sustain 50 to 70 hours, because every fight is interesting, because you're figuring out a way into it.
I think it's really fun, and I don't know if I'm reading too much into it. There are moments in it where it does a Dark Souls fight. It just does, it does a Bloodborne fight. And it's like, I think it's what you remember me saying, there's a dodge fight. Like, I can think of 2 so far where it's been like, you're doing a big old, and maybe even a reference, like, who gave that animal a sword?
Absolutely.
Like, is a theme from Dark Souls and this. And, but there's one where when you go for the bum on a creature that you're chasing around, it shits on you. It does a big fart right in your face, and if you don't get out of that fart cloud fast enough, you're poisoned. And that felt, I don't know if it's a very good moment, but I don't know if it was a direct reference to Dark Souls.
It must be. I think it must be. So From Software trolls its players beautifully. Like, there's, I don't want to spoil anything, but there are moments where it will just kind of, not very often, but just kill you in extremely funny ways, or just surprise you in very, very funny ways. There's a real sense of humour to that game, and there's definitely a lot of, there's an ongoing, hatred for shields, which has existed since Bloodborne, and shield enemies. There's a very funny shield description of shields in Bloodborne, which says they're basically useless, and only an idiot would use them. And then you come across a few shield enemies in Sekiro, and you've got this axe component that you pick up immediately, and it just fucks them right up. So the shields are just the shield guys are just useless in it, and it's just an ongoing kind of in-joke for Dark Souls and Bloodborne players.
You get the axe like immediately before the first shield.
It is. It's such and you're even told it's good against shields. Like there's no ambiguity at all.
Yeah, and it doesn't just break the shield; it just gives you an instant death blow. It's very funny. As someone who's
this is my whole thing.
and you know, as the design ethos has moved away from shield and sword and board, and they've been quite public about saying that we want to move away from that style and be more fast and more aggressive for the combat systems. And shields have become the victim, almost like a symbol of the old approach that gets increasingly easy to fuck up with each game they make, which is lots of in-jokes like that. It's very good.
Well, there's more. And then we should also mention, it's a stealth game.
Yeah.
It's a stealth game.
Yeah, right.
We haven't really talked about that at all. Also, so the big difference between it and Souls and Bloodborne is tremendously more vertical. So you have
width as well as vertical. It's just
bigger.
You just get a big old area.
I feel like I'm used to it now, and that's the thing. Like having now played a bunch of it, and you get so used to using those traversal systems. So you have lots of running and jumping, obviously, but you also have a grapple hook with a really generous range, and you sort of auto lock onto grapple points sort of up in the environment. And so feeling for them and getting a sense of where they are is how you find cool secret routes sometimes. Yeah. There's climbing and things like that. Or like ledge shuffling, Uncharted style ledge shuffling. And, that stuff makes it feel so much, freer, I think. But it also supports this, it's very much not a corridor and room based game. It's a environment game, a lot of the time. There are corridors and rooms, but, predominantly it's a lot more interested in big environments. The other thing is, it has pretty robust stealth mechanics, and, in that, enemies have sight, you make sound, and the way this interacts with it is, again, it feels to me a bit like a replacement for, summoning in a weird way. In that stealth, more often than not, like, it is not a stealth game in that you can ghost it, but it is a stealth game in the sense that, if you approach an area correctly, you can probably take one or more enemies out before it turns into a fight. And often an attack from behind is an instant death blow, even against some big enemies, and including bosses in some cases. So if a boss, or a mini boss at least, has 2 health bars or 2 death blow pips, you can find ways to get rid of one of them and turn the fight into a very different fight in your favor. And often that introduces interesting choices, like, I might be able to get this death blow attack in on the boss before the fight begins, and that's probably worth it. But it also means maybe not deleting some other enemy from the environment. Yeah. And then later on you get abilities, pretty deep into the game actually, you get abilities that then play off that a little bit and allow you to do things off a stealth kill that,
those are great.
Those are real cool, and that change the dynamic of it as well. Like, it has this stealth sandbox kind of aspect to it.
I was really surprised by how much you can just bypass stuff. Like, it is sort of, there's an early sub-boss, which kind of, I don't even know he is a real boss really, but, it's a challenge encounter, but you can completely just go past him. And,
the generals.
Which you could kind of do in Bloodborne and things, but...
You could run through areas, for sure. In fact,
but you'd usually fight everything first, so you can search for stuff, but in this one, there's much more... You feel, oh, fuck it.
Yeah, you can do that in Bloodborne until you can't. There's a whole area of Bloodborne that's built around forcing you to run through, which is interesting, because that used to be a cheese mechanic, but then From actually started building areas around that. And now it feels like this is a better evolution of that.
Yeah. You feel great for just learning environment or intuiting environment enough to get through without getting yourself into debt. And also you can fuck up an encounter and you can then extract yourself, wait for a better opportunity or recover and then go, and then go back in again. Like, I think that my life sort of length is probably longer in Sekiro than it is in Dark Souls. Dark Souls, you tend, if you like not counting the traversal time back to where you were, like the
right, yeah.
life length is, I would say, from what I played so far, is way longer.
I think you spend more time doing the thing you're stuck on. That's the way I'd put it. Like, in any given, the way I think about this is from editing the Bloodborne videos and like cutting out runbacks and farming time and things. Like, I feel like, to answer your question, I don't think we will do a Sekiro video series or anything like that equivalent, because it is, and in a good way, 100% being stuck on whatever fight you're stuck on, because boss runbacks are really short compared to Bloodborne. Like it is, or like Dark Souls, it is far happier to just put your bonfire equivalent pretty much right next to the boss.
Yeah, for sure.
Normally with one person whose job it is to occasionally kill you when you're frustrated and you fuck up against the chump and you realize the boss is doomed. And you know what I mean? But normally, like, there's a couple of bosses where you got a little bit of a run, but like a lot of the time it's literally through this window, up there, you're back to the boss fight, or something like that. And that means that I wouldn't necessarily say that my lives in Sekiro have been longer, but I definitely have spent far less time getting back to the thing I'm actually trying to make progress on, you know, relative to Dark Souls, where it's like, I died, okay, do the fight back to where I died, retrieve thing, regroup, decide if I want to go back and spend thing. Don't. Okay. Try again. Maybe fail. So actually, I would say my Dark Souls lives are longer, but in terms of like time
actually doing stuff, constructive stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot. You spend almost all of that time in Sekiro, at least in my experience. Like I haven't really had to grind yet or anything like that, or even sort of consider, you know, I've gone exploring, but only because I've wanted to, you know, not because I'm desperately stuck. Yeah, the other thing I was going to say, because I think, Alex, you're still sort of on I think it has opened up for you, but not a lot yet.
Oh yeah, no.
Whereas I was really surprised I think it branches more substantially than Bloodborne does, at least for a while. Like, there's a point where it really, like, I realized I had like 7 or 8 different bosses in different locations today. And that's everything from mini bosses to cool encounters to actual big bosses.
Yeah, it's another way they mitigate the combat could be swift and punishing, but they mitigate that by giving you lots of different challenges at the same time to work with until they bring it. There are kind of crunch points where you just have to do this one boss and then it'll open back out again. So yeah, it's quite generous in that way, where if you get frustrated with a boss in a particular area, you just go and pursue the prong in a different area. And it's like there's quite a few routes through the game in terms of the order in which you defeat things, which is refreshing.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to comparing notes. I managed to get through to the point I'm at with no external references, and that's been really satisfying because it makes you feel like the route I've taken is the only one, and I really want to know where I've done things out of order. There's also it feels like it's also a lot more playful in some ways with puzzles to some extent. There are encounters that are far closer to being puzzles than they are to traditional boss fights. At least one really notable example I really liked. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah. It's a full-on crystal maze challenge. That's what it is. It's Hidetaka Miyazaki's, monkey crystal maze puzzle. But then there are puzzles in sort of environmental things you can do to unlock paths and stuff that are genuinely like not about delivering X item to Y location, but actually just playing with the game mechanics you've been taught in the environment in a cool way and changing something, which, yeah, man, it's rare. That's maybe too vague and I can't really explain what it is without getting into spoiler territory, but it's the stuff that, you know, I think to throw it back to Tom, you said this in 2 different conversations with me, but it's worth reiterating. I didn't realize how much of a full-blown, oh shit, this is a full From Software game this was going to be.
Yeah. It was weird because, like, Activision suddenly announced they were publishing it. I wondered if, you know, maybe Activision just dropped a sack of money at From Software's door and said, make us a cool action game. But no, they just published the latest full-on massive thing that From Software made.
I think I can feel a little bit of Activision in there though. There is an attention to accessibility, which I don't think I associate with not even Bloodborne, you know, as being like there's a, you know, there are, you can eavesdrop, we talked about this earlier on, but the eavesdrop conversations are usually incredibly functional, like telling you, go over there, use this against that, you know, like there's so much kind of, quite explicit help going on. And I'm, you know, it's like, I don't know, who knows? To some extent. Who knows where that's coming from? Yeah. But certainly, like, you know, it's not trying to be like only mysterious, which, you know, in the way that Dark Souls is. There's a lot more words in this. Like, there's a lot of dialogue. You know, there's, you don't feel as alone, and like, you know, not only in the story and the, you know, your character's relationship with the world, but also as a player. Like, you know, you might not be able to have your friends in the game with you, but there's a lot more help.
Yeah, there are. Yeah,
your character is voiced for a start. And there are conversation options in some conversations.
Yeah. Sometimes he just goes,
that's all I can remember him saying.
Yeah.
His, voice actor for the Japanese dub is a lot better than the English one, actually.
I didn't even know so there is an English dub.
Yeah. It's perfectly good. I switched halfway through because, as you say, there's a lot of chat during fights. I'm not reading during fights in Sekiro, so I wanted to know what they're saying. But I'm very, like, the Japanese are brilliant. There's, I won't say what there's just a way a boss announces himself when he comes into the combat arena that is just a fucking brilliant moment in Sekiro. Quite early on, actually, but,
I don't know which one that is. There's I've been playing it in Japanese with subtitles and I really, really like it.
Yeah,
like,
it's
got a really good atmosphere. In fact, I like to talk about, because I think you're right that it does have more of just like traditional storytelling and a bit of tutorial stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely reasonable. However, I wouldn't want people to be worried that it isn't full of opaque From Software stuff.
That to be clear, like there's shitloads of that going on as well. But like the fundamentals, like in the way that the original Dark Souls, like that you would, like many people, like didn't know fundamentals,
Yeah.
Whereas this game is very much like, and this isn't just dialogue, like the level design at the start, like that open area, like it's the most explicitly tutorial kind of a design that, like, it's very elegant. It's very elegant.
Like,
it's not,
it is, and it is an area
sort of,
you return to. It's this chunk of it is a part of the whole.
Right.
Like, you haven't got to that yet, but it is like, when you get back there, you're like, oh shit, this is literally like, they cordon it off in some ways, but they do just take a chunk of the world and say, play in this, learn some stuff in this. Okay, fine. Game start now.
Yeah. But it's, it's been weirdly the most friendly, despite it being a lot of the talk about the game so far being it is most hard.
Yeah. I think the difficulty conversation is weird because people can understandably equate it to how quickly you die, but really in terms of the cost to your time and sort of how you feel about a given encounter, I think it's not as strenuous as Dark Souls or Bloodborne at all. And I also think that's, again, a lot of the mechanics that create those feelings are tied into the themes of Bloodborne and Dark Souls, which are about dead worlds and despair and echoes of great societies that have fallen and that kind of stuff. I agree. It's much more accessible. There aren't hidden mechanics. So in Dark Souls, for example, the distance and speed of your roll is determined by how the weight of your armor is wearing, and you just that is a hidden stat. Like, you just don't see it. Like, seasoned players know, they recognise by the roll they're getting that they're light enough to do it. There's nothing like that in Sekiro. Like, it expressly says, here's how you dodge this type of attack. Here's how you dodge this type of attack. And it equips you with everything you need in the first 2 hours.
And then it gives you a little guy, like a guy to actually just practice against, and he gives you just 3 times, like you get,
Undying.
And then, every time you get a new skill, then you can practice against him. He tells you exactly what to do and gives you that specific circumstance.
Like, and again, it's a nice gesture of like, kind of, it is a very From Software experience. Like, him as NPC, it feels like a very, very traditional From Software NPC. He can't die. It's not really explained why he can't die, at least not at first. Like, he just can't die. And you can practice against him and you can ask him to teach you different techniques, which is definitely a new thing where it's like, do this kind of thing against me and I'll learn to counter it. But, there's a bit, I think, and this is not a spoiler, because just if you, I think it's after you finish like the second free fight against him where you just have to take him out basically for practice. And he says, could you go easier on me? It does hurt a lot. It hurts a lot.
You have to, again, that's one of the bits where you get an option, and I thanked him for allowing me to do it. Basically. Thank you for being my tutorial for me, essentially. And you do learn why you can't die eventually. There's a lot of lore and stuff, so it's worth reading all the item descriptions and all the skill descriptions, because there's stuff to unpack in the game for sure.
There's, I don't want to get into, this is the thing we probably can't talk loads about because I don't want to get into spoilers, but it's also worth stating that, like, it really, really feels to me like a continuation of the themes of both Dark Souls and Bloodborne. And in fact, it unites them in some ways. In some broad senses, it is different to both of them. I think it's worth saying. It's not literally like, a narrative sequel to them, but a lot of Dark Souls ideas about, sort of like, faith and kinghood and sort of, dads and the path to, redemption and becoming whole again and all of these ideas and are present, very much present, and wrapped up in a different set of packaging, I think, and approached from a different angle, which is really nice.
Yeah, there's a source of great power that different sects find different perverse ways of trying to achieve, and that's throughout Bloodborne, that's throughout Dark Souls. Like they're very similar kind of templates almost that are expressed through Japanese mythology this time, rather than a gothic horror or kind of medieval horror. Or
and then like I said, there are boss fights where it does a big old Dark Souls right on your face. There are tricks and little moments where it does a Bloodborne on you, and that's kind of nice to see, because I love Bloodborne for its themes. And I'm not saying like literally like here's a Cthulhu, but like some of Bloodborne's ideas about sort of dreams and reality and the veil between those things are present in nice, subtle, interesting ways that, again, kind of...
Yeah, and time being loose, and kind of causality between different time streams being, also very loose, and, things that you think are a memory are able to affect the present and that kind of stuff. Again, lifted from Dark Souls and from Bloodborne.
I'd like to see, I'd like to understand, I mean, obviously, so from being a Japanese company, like the two big games, like Bloodborne and Dark Souls obviously were about Western mythology, and I would be really interested to see how it plays around with Japanese mythology, which will probably go straight over our heads. So.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think I haven't gelled with the fiction as much as Bloodborne, is because Bloodborne references stuff I'm just very familiar with in a way that feels like brilliantly realized. Whereas there's going to be lots of symbolism and, I don't know what significance carps have in Japanese culture, for example.
Oh, some massive fucking koi.
Yeah, it's just like carps and koi and what they mean, because they're recurring symbols throughout Sekiro, and I'm just not culturally equipped to understand that in the same way. So it doesn't resonate with me as much as Bloodborne, which is why I still love Bloodborne so much, because I got so much out of its references as much as its combat and its gloom. So I can't wait to read some really good writing by people who do understand that stuff and enlighten me about it.
At a totally superficial level, I think it's got a really lovely visual identity of its own, though, that's rooted in a lot of that stuff. Like
it's one of the things that I struggle with, certainly and particularly in Bloodborne, actually, is the relentless grimness.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I think I said this last week as well, but it's nice to be somewhere pretty most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure that changes over the game.
I mean,
it's really beautiful.
It's a From Software game. You're going to a shitty fucking swamp. You're gonna like it, and there's gonna be, there's like one moment, and again, it's too deep in the game, I think, to spoil, but like, there's a moment where you're in a shitty fucking swamp, and the enemies you're fighting there basically don't make any sense. We're back, everybody. And I think it's not very long, that's the thing. It's quite a short, truncated section, but it feels like, I don't know, it's almost like a cameo appearance. It's like, it's me, everybody. It's Blight Town. I'm back. I'm gone again. Off stage right. And it's, again, it feels like one of those From Software jokes, like a band, playing almost all of their new album, and everyone's like, play the hits. And then Miyazaki lifts a plectrum and it's like,
it's a shitty fishing village.
It's a shitty fishing village full of idiots. Prang. Prepare to fight them over and over and over again.
There are no outright duff areas in this game in the way that there are in previous, there's the Bed of Chaos down there in Dark Souls, which is obviously just an unfinished bit. And then this
untextured World of Warcraft raid dungeon.
They just copied and pasted loads of an early boss in. It's not a good area. And also there's I think the snake forest in Bloodborne's crap. And in Dark Souls 2 there's a really shitty misty forest that's just really bad. And it feels like they've been the areas are much more consistent in Sekiro, and I was a bit worried when I started playing it for the first 5 to 10 hours, because there are a lot of kind of samey villages and stuff, and I didn't think it was going to necessarily branch out, but when it does, it does get there, and it's super satisfying to go on that journey as well.
I think Sekiro's brief dalliance into misty forest full of ghosts and massive fucking chickens is its moment of why is this area like this? But again, what's
the significance of the chickens? That must be something.
Yeah, it's chickens, man. Yeah, first time I saw one, it was very much a what the fuck.
It's like there's chickens, and for some reason, poisonous geckos that are rubbish.
You can surf on.
You surf them as you stab them. Why are they here? It's really weird.
Oh, they're the ones in the bottom of the valley.
They get everywhere.
They're everywhere. They're recurring, and I don't know why. It's
the shitty geckos.
I kind of like, part of me thinks it's almost a joke about basilisks from previous games, which are the most feared enemies in Dark Souls, because they can curse you with, they halve your health bar, and it's a massive ball ache to undo the curse. And maybe these are just kind of like mini basilisks. Maybe Miyazaki or someone on that team just loves
I don't know.
little lizards. You just don't know, but again, you get lots of consistent through lines from these games that those games invite you to speculate about that, because everything has a little significance to it. Everything feels a bit significant.
Yeah, there's definitely like part of its internal kind of mythology, I guess, across all of those games. There's sort of ways it teaches you to expect certain things. There are, oh man, I would almost like to do a spoiler podcast for some of its absolute dick moves, and like really good, like, just, where it plays with the UI, it does stuff to, tit you about basically, and then, force you into a new thing. And it's really, 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 really good. I think, I wasn't expecting to get a game that, love as much as those games and appreciate the low hanging fruit, but, that are as that good. And to be honest, to come away from the hours I spent with it thinking, I think this might be the best one. I don't know if, anyone else would cleave to that, but like, I think I've had a more satisfying time consistently over 25 hours with Sekiro than I with any previous From game. And I don't feel like I've missed the things that I love about those games thematically. Like, there are things I very much love about Bloodborne that this isn't doing. But in terms of like pain to enjoyment to meaningful challenge, the ratio just feels so much better. And it is doing things with mythology and its ideas and things. Like, if it was just an excellent combat game, it would be like, that's almost what I was expecting, I think, would be like really cool, hardcore shinobi combat game. Yeah. Like, but you'd always go back to Dark Souls or Bloodborne for the kind of meaty kind of storytelling or something like that. And this, I don't know, it feels like it's doing everything a little bit better, and that's kind of amazing, because
I think it's the second part I'm not so sure about in terms of where you end up with Bloodborne. Like, I think about it a lot, and I'm not even playing it, and I'm not sure that Sekiro will necessarily have the same resonance, but I'm not sure. And a lot of the kind of deeper stories come out over the months as fans piece together bits of lore and come up with cool theories and stuff.
There's a system, and I'm not sure if, I'll venture it, and I might be missing something, I haven't finished the game yet, but you can give sake to people. You can find, can find sake and just give it to NPCs, and it's a limited resource. You just choose who you're going to give it to. And most of the time what you get for this is just a story. Like, you just share sake with them, and they tell you something.
Nice.
And, cause it's a limited resource, this feels like you can't get through this game and hear everyone's stories. Some people stop accepting sake at a certain point, but the type of sake you give them also affects the kind of story they tell you. And so that felt to me like, oh shit, there's stuff here that I now know about these characters and the way they relate to each other and things that I definitely wouldn't have known had I not made this almost arbitrary decision to give this sake to this person.
Yeah, that's super interesting actually, because like the stories they tell tied directly into items and other things that you really learn about their associates, and I don't know, there's some cool stuff I can't get into that you could speculate about. But it's definitely worth.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like it's not. I'm with you on the Bloodborne thing. I think in the in terms of how evocative stuff is, but I think also because Bloodborne didn't come out on PC, if someone were to go straight from Dark Souls to this, I think that's a tremendous improvement. And in fact, I think it's only competing with Bloodborne thematically. And that's a tough act, just a really tough act to follow. And the fact that it's close, I think. I don't think it's like, I think you can make the argument for Sekiro because it has got stuff to say. And it has got some amazing images. Like, I think, Bloodborne has really really amazing moments. But like, some of its most amazing kind of ideas thematically are like also tied up in stuff that's like Rom the Vacuous Spider. It's a poo in a white field.
Yeah.
It's just a poo in a white lake.
But then you've got like the Cult of Mensis, and that whole area is just extraordinary, I think.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh god. We should probably stop banging on about it. But like, even bits of From Software consistent visual shorthand, like the sort of, Sekiro very early on shows you like, and it repeats this motif, like rows and rows and rows of almost like manically carved Buddha statues, like lining the walls that pile up in the same way that the kind of almost like, Hiroshima Afterglow thing in Bloodborne does, where you see like the people that have been turned to stone as they're trying to crawl away from whatever the fuck happened in your life.
Like crawling into the walls. It's an amazing horror image.
But it's the same trope, kind of like the rows of frozen human figures, like piling up into the walls repeats in really interesting ways. Oh man, that's what I'm talking about, like it having this relationship.
It does have that. It's definitely, it's absolutely a From game.
And it's, the same idea of, this being about something profound about a relationship with death, which is the common thread for all of these games really is, how do we feel about dying? Are you a fan or not? If not, that might be complicated.
And the overall atmosphere is lighter in Sekiro, but there are moments of really good horror as well. Like, I think that team has a good sense of horror.
There's some real unnerving.
It's
really unnerving stuff. Man, it's really good. Can't believe how good it is. Shall we stop talking about it?
Yeah.
Because we stopped talking about Sekiro, I think, before this break, I don't know what happened. We should do questions now.
Okay.
Yes?
Right.
Questions from questions?
Questions, yes.
Okay, good. The first one of them, questions that is, comes from Minnie or Mickey, who writes, Dear Squeak and Squeak Bar, what do you make of modern PC gaming hardware? A mild opening. Do you like RGB lighting?
Yeah.
There we go.
The fan. We found the fan.
I like it. Yeah, it's good.
You sounded like a gecko that had just been surfed to death.
It's
What do you think of Chris's RGB lighting?
It's not
Lots of blinky lights over here, Tom.
It's not coordinated. You've got
Well, this one changes. Now it is.
the mouse.
Oh, no, it's gone again.
For listeners who can't see this, is cycling through the entire rainbow, and it's very nice. The keyboard is a staunch red.
Yeah.
Staunchly red.
Over here we've got some green lights on the amp for the microphones.
It's all
and some
clashing.
red ones over on the other side.
Yeah.
So it's a big old clash. I think you've got to coordinate RGB, get a profile,
green light and Xbox pad there.
create a vibe.
Create more of a vibe.
Create a vibe.
Yeah.
with your
More of a vibe
RGB
needed.
lighting.
I'll tell you what I need is Amazon to deliver the little keyboard hoover I ordered.
I want one of those as well.
It was a complete whim today. I literally looked down as I was typing and went, and then,
Yeah.
and then sort of like, just rather than go get some compressed air or something like that, I just, in the height of modern opulence,
I need a Dyson.
typed in,
Tiny Hoover.
I hung on Amazon
Hold me
Prime,
closer.
typed in,
Tiny Hoover.
I basically just screamed like, Jeff Bezos, help me! And then a tiny Hoover is promised that will arrive soon. From Big Jeff's, Jersey Hoover factory or whatever it is. Guernsey tax-free Hooverdrome. I don't know.
I'm a bit worried because I've got a very overpriced Razer keyboard, which is very nice, mechanical keyboard, but inside each key is a laser. I think I might have said this on the podcast before. And,
Does it fire at all the goo?
No, but I'm more worried that
Shoot it all.
the goo will obstruct the lasers inside.
Well,
I see.
Yeah,
Right.
and so when you press the key down, the laser is blocked. But then there's a hole in the mechanism underneath the key, and as soon as that goes down, the laser completes, and so you get an instant speed of light reaction, apparently.
But
what
it's the
if a
speed
bit
of the
thank
key going.
goodness.
Surely it's the speed of the key going down.
What if a bit of Dorito gets
There's
in
a
there?
lot of questions here, and the
What if a bit of
Doritos.
Dorito gets in there?
Yeah.
Have you ever done the thing where you take all the keys off your keyboard and look at it?
I have.
I'm trying
bad
to
news.
avoid doing that with my latest purchase.
It's very bad
I
news.
just want to literally just point a device at my keyboard.
But isn't it
Like
just going to suck?
exercising it.
But isn't it going to just suck the goo up into the recess underneath the key?
Well, I hope
if you don't take the key off.
They
Gotta
might,
take the
they
keys
might do. What I'm expecting to happen is for me to point the little mini Hoover at my keyboard, kind of Ghostbusters style,
Yeah,
and for an entire flesh simulacrum
Well, like
of
Sekiro
myself.
kind of money sucking things.
Yeah, exactly. But like for an entire kind of like, sort of flesh golem version of myself to emerge fully formed from the keyboard, like screaming, denying, not wanting to be exercised before being safely sealed away.
Father, you gave me life.
Dad, no! Be gone, keyboard son.
Away with you.
That's my boss battle for later this week when the
Well,
Amazon
I got some really nice brown fans.
fans.
Fans. Yeah, they're brown and they're
And nice.
and they're inside my computer, so I don't even see them.
Right.
But I get to know that they're brown in there.
Wow.
That's nice.
Why is brown good?
This
though?
wasn't even the first.
Brown's
three.
nice.
Is it nice?
I feel like I should read the rest of the question because I got like three words
What
into
was
it.
the, what was the
The question was,
the
it's
upshot?
pretty much what we were talking about. Do you like RGB lighting on your 15 button?
Yes.
Logitech Monster mouse? A simple mouse with 2 buttons and very basic scroll wheel, or something in between? Lots of love, Minnie/Mickey, depending on your outlook in life. So yeah, it's a mini mouse, thing, Mickey Mouse thing. Mice. It's specifically about mice, but we can talk about whatever the fuck. So,
right.
I mean, what were we talking about? You like a nice brown fan, hiddly safe and away where no one will know, which is this, I like to think of as a sort of, kind of like a bit of an Edwardian approach to PC hardware. Yeah. Like, you know, the good fan is for guests only, Margaret.
Yes, yeah. Don't let them see our brown fans.
Yeah. Once a year at Christmas, you can see the brown fan.
I don't really understand all that PC gaming hardware stuff. I have a nice mouse. It's very black, but it's mostly the mouse I have simply because I've got a weird kind of mouse grip, and I find most mice just for no reason.
Slip out of your hand.
Fucking no, really uncomfortable.
A bar of soap.
No, they hurt. They literally fucking hurt.
Oh, shit.
And because I grip them in some way, and it's a certain shape, which
right.
for some reason.
How are you hurt by a round object?
I don't fucking know.
Can you do the mouse hold and we'll try and describe it for the...
I do a claw.
You do a claw.
And I can't help, but I think it's like I'm pinching them between my thumb and my little finger.
Right.
So I get a wear mark on the
cover for me and just stand up
left.
to get to the bottom of this.
But I don't know how, I've written...
Alex, you've got like
this is a test mouse.
Long, slim fingers
if I touch,
here.
It's the wrong kind. It's going to hurt me. It's going to
So
hurt.
we've got a test mouse, and this is the first time we've ever done a kind of...
So, this is live hardware on the
test.
Crank Harbor. So Alex is now using one of my old mice on his knee.
So I'm clutching it like this. And
Yeah, so I think you've got your
and
long
fingers.
if it's too humped, it just...
Is this, would you describe this as too humped for you?
It's too humped.
It's too humped.
It's quite flat.
It's a Logitech G30 something.
It's got hand scurf on it already.
Yeah, it's pretty grim and old, that one, and broken, so please don't touch it actually. But just, I feel like, I don't know what's wrong with you.
It's a freak's attitude, freak's behavior.
I like...
Demonstrate.
Okay, I'll... I'm also like a claw.
Right.
But
Okay.
I've just got stubby fingers and a small hand, so this is
But that's more or less the same grip as me.
Yeah, and that's fine. But this is like, I think I've just got smaller size hands.
Yeah, I've got pretty small hands as well. We have very small hands.
So that's perfect for
can
me.
I try my, let's see how, I'm
Because you're left-handed as well.
Yeah,
of course,
I am. So I'm like that. I'm a flat-handed.
So you rest against the palm of the mouse. This is very interesting.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Like his hand.
It's like
he's one with the mouse.
Perfectly kind of
contoured to it.
Just,
it's like a second skin.
Mouse. It loves the mouse.
It loves the mouse. Imagine, I like
smothering it. Ooh, it can't breathe.
Die. Sleep, little mouse.
It's like a lion with its mouth fastened over a gazelle.
It's like, I think of it, it's like a
squid.
It's like a snake.
Devouring.
It's like a snake that started eating a
Yes,
dog.
that's true.
It's
about to do the gulp.
You know, it's a backyard tragedy in Australia. Family pet on its way into a python.
No,
it's the way I hold a mouse.
It's a secure grip. For sure.
I think I hold mine like a sort of strange bird.
Yes, you do.
Yeah,
you look like
you
you're
do,
trying to hoist
yes.
it back to your nest. You know?
Yeah, a precious thing. A precious RGB lit thing that you just need to cover and own.
I heard an interesting bird fact the other day.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, genuinely. Good noise as well. You're full of these good noises today, Tom.
Oh, sorry, I'm very excited. I had a lovely steak before I came out here, so
It's just
full of energy.
steak noises.
Just steak.
Yeah, I'm going to put this down because I'm clicking it. And that's not, I mean, this wasn't a great visual kind of podcast experience as it was.
I don't know, hope you
but yeah, a good bird fact before we get back onto the topic of mice. I didn't realize this. So, there's a reason why some birds, are easy to train or relatively easy to train and some birds are impossible to train. I heard this from someone who does professional academic work with
Bird
Harris
training.
hawks.
Ooh, cool.
Very interesting conversation about mocapping hawks in order to figure out how the fuck birds land, basically. And to see, amusingly, if there are any applications for, like, engineering. Like, can we make a plane that lands better? But,
Right.
Well, it turns out birds fuck it up a lot, so probably not. But anyway, I thought this was interesting. This is also apropos of nothing. But, birds have like a pouch in there, like just below their beaks when they eat, where they keep food before they go and actually sort of process it and digest it. And, I knew this sort of abstractly, but I didn't realize the ramifications. And this is also a broader explanation of why owls are stupid. And willful.
This is answering all kinds of questions.
Yeah, I'm learning so much.
And so, you know, when you're training like a falcon or a hawk or something, you give it treats because it wants food to teach it to do things, but it doesn't get the satisfaction of that food straight away. It just stores it because a bird instinctively won't eat until it's gone off to sit in a tree and digest and eat, because their instinct is get the food, put it in your little pouch, fuck off up a tree where a fox can't get you. That's how birds do. Therefore,
you can't reward them.
Therefore you can reward them because they'll just keep taking it. They don't know because they're still hungry. They haven't, well, yeah, you gotta be careful, but they will keep taking food and they'll keep learning and doing, commands and things like that. Owls don't have this at all. They eat straight away. Like they will hoist your little mouse up off the ground like Alex with a mouse and take it up into a tree, eat it, and then they're done. So if you give an owl a treat, it leaves. It leaves.
Bye.
But you can train owls.
You can, but you shouldn't. Because they're just notoriously unreliable. Apparently, because I think there's a thing post Harry Potter for having like owls deliver the rings at weddings and things. Just terrible fucking idea. Like any other trained bird, because an owl will just go like, I've forgotten what I've come in for. I've had a mouse for, I'm just going to sit in a tree now. I'm an owl. What the more do you want?
Yes.
I don't understand the sanctity of this occasion. Like,
I will not be brought into Jeff Bezos' delivery mechanisms.
Yeah, I'll kill and eat a drone, but I won't have any part in this, basically. I'm an owl.
Oh, I've got a lovely childhood memory of being at some sort of bird thing. Getting really off the question here. But I held an enormous gauntlet that felt really heavy because I was small. Must have been about 8 or 9 or something. And they said, just hold this up and then watch the tree line. And after a few minutes, a beautiful white barn owl flew out from what seemed like half a mile away and slowly just soared over and then landed on my upraised gauntlet fist. And I felt like a god. And it was amazing.
I'm the king of owls!
And I realised now that I
crowned owl master.
should have checked for wedding rings on that thing if it had kind of forgotten from a previous...
Look inside its mouth.
Its gizzard. It doesn't have.
It does them poos, doesn't it? With all the
poos out wedding rings. They shit wedding rings, those owls.
Yeah.
Look out for them.
Rings.
Yeah, basically, if you're going to have a bird officiate your wedding, not an owl. That's my...
that's excellent
that's your finding.
Yeah,
that's the takeaway.
That's my belief. That's how I feel about
I think that
games.
does answer Mickey's
It's a good
question.
RGB.
I mean, to get back to the question, I use whatever kind of mouse, left-handers can use. It's pretty hard to find left-handed mice, so I just use ambidextrous mice and switch
What's
off.
what's the ambidextrous thing about it?
They're symmetrical.
Right and left.
Most mice are curved. And they curve inwards.
Mine is not.
Yeah, so, most gaming mice are curved for a right hand. So, as in they follow the contour of your thumb. Mm-hmm. So, that's not good for me, because thumb other way. Different thumbed.
Yep, mouse, 2 thumb buttons, back and forwards for internet sites, mouse wheel, and then 2 sensitivity buttons. That's all I care about. Nothing else. Thank you very much.
My keyboard, I like my keyboard, is a mechanical one. It's by a company called Ducky. And with it came some additional keycaps, one of which has a picture of a duck on it. So I put that in where the escape key is. So I'm very pleased with that. No lights on it whatsoever. Well, apart from the caps lock key, which I can't see from where I sit, so it may as well not be there.
No lights for me, but the escape key. It's a duck.
And brown fans.
And that's as far as my gamer paraphernalia goes.
There we go.
Yeah.
Good. Well, that's us then. That's our identity.
Yeah, that's good.
That's expressed through PC hardware.
Good thoughts on tech. Always good to check in, on the latest tech. Yeah, love it. Next, Friends writes, Dear CNC, as gamers, we spend a vast amount of time over the course of our lives sitting alone in a dark room, tapping keys and pushing buttons. It's therefore perfectly understandable that some people would consider this to be a waste of time. Or, at least, inferior to other forms of relaxation that result in tangible skills, such as learning to play an instrument.
What kind of an instrument?
The sousaphone.
Yeah.
Best one.
The only one.
You put me on the spot, you get what you get.
Yeah, no, I was pleased.
So I posit this question. What transferable skills has gaming taught you? And how has it improved you as a person? Has navigating vast open world environments improved your ability to traverse London on foot? Did leading a guild or clan help you kickstart a small family business? I appreciate that those are very specific examples, so help me out here. I'm really struggling to justify 20 years of shooting zombies and having sex with aliens. Kind regards, Friends. So, this is an interesting one because this is one of those questions where it's like, do I disagree with the entire premise of this question? And the answer is maybe. I realized recently, I think, to stop looking for transferable skills from the things I do for fun, which is something that definitely kind of dogged me for quite a while. In fact, I think it's one of the reasons I ended up working in games was to try and derive some sort of extracurricular value from thing I was doing, because actually I liked the spaceships and the shoot bangs and the punch games. And obviously, regret every single minute I've spent in this accursed industry. So the whole thing was a stupid idea. And I should have just enjoyed them. No, that's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is I think recently I've come around to the idea that, it's okay for your entertainment to be not galvanizing in some broader sense.
Is it something very, sort of Protestant-y about needing something to have kind of sort of practical sort of purpose to it, and it kind of that's the kind of thinking can sometimes distract you from the fact that it's having positive benefits in your life that you maybe aren't tangible or immediately obvious, like the fact that it's relaxed you and kept your heart, your blood pressure down, consistently for decades, something you can't measure. Maybe it was good for you. Maybe it wasn't. Like, fuck it. You also got to success.
So I feel like we skipped straight over, like, if any of us actually have learned applicable, translatable skills from games. No. Anything?
I would say literally nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like,
apart from the fact that, I got a job out of it,
Yeah, we've all built careers out of it, but yeah.
But not out of being good at games or,
No.
a skill we learned in games.
I mean, there's probably, I would say maybe there's, I could see, I haven't ever built a guild or anything, but I would imagine there's quite a lot of people for whom they would never have thought they were a manager type of person, but then they built a guild and realized that actually that was something they had, skill and
I think online, why did knock my microphone all the way away from my face? Online role playing taught me that I liked telling stories. And that is, it was, I think it gave me my
then it's the other way around, isn't it? Like, you because you liked stories, that's what took you there. Like,
right. Yeah. Games didn't teach me writing, but they gave me a way to use writing that had provided a friendly audience of people who would be supportive and encourage me to do that thing. That's nice, and it's something the games have genuinely given me.
I'm sure you'd have,
but that's
if
in
they
lieu
didn't
of
exist, I'm sure you'd have found some other
or
expression.
Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, right? I'm really struggling to, I think games have tested skills that I have. Like, I think, being on a Dota team has tested my conflict resolution skills and my ability to manage my own mood. And therefore, in giving me the chance to practice those things, possibly made them better.
Well, but that's pretty squarely agrees with the...
Yeah, but it's not why I was doing it.
No, sure.
That's the difference. I think, and that's and I am the sort of person who will play a game in order to, get better at something. I want to be good at the thing. I want to be competitive at the thing. I want to be good at parrying the sword blows. Thank you. I want to make the cool gif of getting it all right. Like, that is me. But those skills that's more the satisfaction of learning something. And those skills are ultimately localized to the environment in which they are learned. Perfectly good example. Don't sword fight me in real life, please. I played a lot of sword fighting games. I like them a lot. I think about how to design them a lot. Don't just, I don't know. I don't want to. Happy to just press the right bumper or the left bumper to make sword go. And that'd be my full total engagement with, that particular set of practical realities. Thank you. Anything? I'm trying to think if there's any other sort of, lesson to be taken from this sentiment of make my 20-year hobby worthwhile in retrospect.
Yeah. But for me, it's like what I said, it doesn't need to. Like, I think we live in a culture which kind of suggests that we have to kind of justify what we do. Because there are things that are worthwhile and things that aren't, apparently.
So I was going to challenge the premise of this question of the fact that learning a musical instrument is intrinsically better than learning to be good at Sekiro. Yeah. Actually, why?
I remember, this reminds me of this big argument. I had this big argument with Marsh years and years and years ago. It was when, it was sort of Guitar Hero was kicking off, and there are all those videos of people doing extraordinary feats of dexterity in that game. And Marsh was kind of a bit disgusted by it, sort of saying, what a way, like, there's so much effort and time and been put into mastering that, that they could have put into, I don't know whether he did use sort of learning an actual instrument, but, it was that kind of an argument. I mean, and there is a part of me that definitely agrees with that. There is a bit of kind of like, oh my God, why did you spend 1,000 hours learning that speed run when you could have written something that, but it's kind of mad. Like, then I feel hold myself up to, then I kind of try to stop myself. But we had a big argument, and I was sort of trying to, argue that, well, there is beauty in doing that, and there's the sense of satisfaction and self kind of worth that comes from that is sort of, nothing to be sniffed at.
So, as Chris said, like, learning is really fun. And, as an adult, the opportunities you have to learn in such a focused way are actually quite limited without spending a lot of money doing a course or something. And so for playing Sekiro for 70 hours in 1 week with no guys or internet to help was like an intense learning experience. And that's what I've found so rich about it, is that I mastered that system, and that was to me completely satisfying.
And even though what you learned isn't necessarily
because, and this is really interesting, it's almost like they've reversed the question, because we place so much, it costs money to acquire skills in other contexts as an adult, or indeed when you're younger, because there's this assumption that you're doing so in pursuit of professional value, that you pay money to go on a course because it will reap dividends for you in a different regard, right? That like everything has to have an end. Like learning for learning's sake is not really a thing, to be honest. Like you get a weird, there's, in some places they call it academia, but there's like there's a broad theme of like, even within academia, are you doing this for the professional path, or for the joy of knowing these things in this subject area? Like, that's what games can do, I think. Good games, at least. And that is absolutely worthwhile, because for the price of a game, you get to just have the experience of learning something, but without this attendant pressure to knit it into your life. Also, Tom, did you shave your beard off when you finished Sekiro?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you had, because I saw you on Friday and you were deep into it, and you had a full, actually quite impressive
quite a big beard. Yeah, it gets big pretty quickly, and that week was all it took.
Because you just looked into the middle distance and said, this is my Sekiro beard.
Yeah, so we were at Pip's leaving drinks for PC Gamer, and one of our friends came up to me and like commented on how big my beard had gotten, and that was the moment I was kind of like, oh yeah, I've just been a fucking Sekiro hermit all week.
Yeah.
And the beard is a direct result of that. So it was quite loud in the pub. I just yelled, "This is my Sekiro beard!" like that. And then, shaved it off the next day. So I've got, this is beautifully trimmed. I feel like, I'm a member of society again after that experience.
Yeah. Humanity restored.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I'm no longer hollow. Everything's fine. It literally is correct. Yeah.
Good, yeah, but nonetheless, I understand the anxiety that leads to asking this question.
Yeah, sure.
I hope this has been, so I don't really mean to like cast aspersions in that direction. It's more that like, cause I share this anxiety and I've just learned to dismiss it.
Agreed. But then, vast majority of people learning musical instruments, do it purely for themselves, and it's not actually in pursuit of a greater art or expression. It's part of a personal satisfaction about learning, and there's no reason that games should be different necessarily.
Yeah. Well, some people learn musical instruments so they can play Wonderwall at house parties.
That's a very specific type of person.
And that is much less.
So actually,
that's worse.
Less valuable
it is worse.
To the universe.
So here's the question for you. I'm going to posit a situation, right? Imagine we're all, I don't know, at university at a house party, and there's two suddenly sliding doors style split screen. There are two possibility spaces. It's 2 a.m. I'm there. In one timeline, I'm holding an acoustic guitar, and I say, do you know what? It's time to jam. And then I start playing Wonderwall, or like, if it was me at Circuit University, it'd be much twattier than that, right? Other timeline, right? But it's modern day, I guess, right? I've got a tablet with me. Guess what? Google Stadia. It works, I guess. I immediately whip out my phone and a pad, and I'm like, Anyway, time for the hits. Here's Blight Town. And I treat everyone to a flawless run-through of Blight Town from Dark Souls 1. And everyone's like...
I know which one I would respect more, that's the thing. What?
Yeah. See, like, what timeline would you rather live in?
The drop attack was flawless!
Anyway, here's Blight Town.
Oh, don't you just hate it when people come to your house party and they just get Blight Town out? And, oh my god, it's just so fucking...
Actually, to be completely honest, I first met you, Tom Senior, at your housewarming party for the flat I would subsequently eventually live in.
Yeah,
what did he do?
I got very drunk with Tom Francis, who I also met for the first time that night.
Yes.
And we spoke extensively about the use of jazz in the Halo ODST soundtrack and Mass Effect. And that subsequently led to, Tom remembering who the fuck I was when it came for me to eventually end up doing work at PC Gamer.
Right.
So my career began because I literally got to a house party and went,
jazz.
Anyway, do you want me to honk opinions about video games at you? And the rest is 270 odd episodes of this fucking podcast. So it can pay off, I guess.
Yeah, it's good. That's a good origin story.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tom got really drunk and fell asleep sitting up.
Not me.
No, Tom Francis. Tom lived there, so Tom Senior lived there. So.
I was there too.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant episode of Futurama. It's like, I live here, so I'll be in the background. And,
yeah, exactly.
Stay in the background for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, the Scruffy the janitor of...
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Anyway, should we do the next question? The next question is from, well, it's more of a statement. So an anonymous American who writes, and I think an anonymous left-handed American, this is important. They state, "We exist. I do not switch my silverware across hands. Please do not reveal my identity lest I be driven into the sea."
I don't understand this. What's this referring to?
This is an increasingly long conversation we're having about...
You're better explaining it than I am, Alex.
So we discovered with some, shock, possibly dismay, that our European way of cutting up food using cutlery, keeping our fork in our left hand or right hand, but keeping our knife and fork in the same hands in order to eat.
Yeah,
cutting. Eating,
right,
cutting, eating, keeping,
one hand for one thing.
one hand, one cutlery, right? Americans, they cut the food, right? They then transfer the fork to the other hand, the leading hand. They then eat the morsel. They then transfer back.
What?
Cut some more. And this is we were going, what? And then it's been corroborated over and over and over again ever since.
I've eaten with Americans and I've never ever...
So our anonymous noticed. American here is clarifying that it exists and also they do not conform.
Oh my god! No,
yeah. This gets deeper and deeper. This is our Chinatown.
Yeah,
yeah. Fine Chinatown. Made myself laugh.
I'm sort of weirdly devastated, and I'm not sure why.
It's because every American...
It's such a social norm that it's just like...
Why would you not do that?
Why would you not do that?
Has been doing some kind of shell game under, on the table while you've not been looking.
I'm going to be looking next time.
It's like a continuity error.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoops.
And it's all you can see now. The entire continent is all you can see is people
just switching.
Where's the knife? Where's the knife now, Tom? Where's the knife? Cool. Paddy writes, "Hello. In my transition to adulthood, I feel the need to dress for success, but still want to represent my gaming roots. Where to get good, subtle gaming-related clothing? Something to wear to work that doesn't get double takes except from gamers who know the series. Polo tops with a Witcher logo, black hoodies with a small N7. What is the least subtle gaming clothing item you've seen?" Subtle. Currently my CSS, as in Counter-Strike source, not, cascading style sheets or cool band. Boom headshot and iPone noobs t-shirts from web series Pure Ponage only get used when lounging around the house. Love the pod. Paddy from Dublin. So I feel like we're in a really unique position because we've, all been shot at with a t-shirt cannon. In the form of a career, in games media, where you go to an event and someone says, here's your USB stick full of screenshots you actually need, take a t-shirt, and you say, I'll just have the assets, and they look at you with this look on your face like they only just realized that you weren't their friend. And, and so you go, oh, I'll have a t-shirt, and then you take a medium t-shirt because you've had a big lunch and you're feeling slightly dowdy that day. And then I'm speaking really from the heart here, but then you end up, with
wow,
like a pretty huge collection of oversized t-shirts for doomed MMOs.
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
Oh, what was the, Richard Garriott MMO?
Tabula Rasa.
Yeah, Tabula Rasa. I've got that and still wear it.
Yeah.
Because it somehow fits me quite well.
There's, I think honestly, there's Bath would probably be an interesting kind of case. If you go to charity shops in Bath, just scroll those racks for like APB t-shirts. Lineage 2, you know?
Yeah, I think, so there's a whole sort of discourse online about how, journalists get kickbacks and stuff, but it's not that.
It's all shaming.
It's a bag of
shaming
of
things.
just rubbish. And it's, you know, there might be a t-shirt in there, there'll be a pen in there perhaps, and a USB sticks with some assets on it or something. Yeah. But, you know, I've got this down to an art now at like trade shows where I always turn it down anyway, but like, they'll hand it to me and I'm like, oh, well, thank you. Yeah, right. I'll just take it with the left hand, sitting down in the chair, transfer bag to right hand, move the bag behind the chair, drop it there, continue the business, and then leave without the bag. And I've just left many bags of things behind chairs in trade shows because I've got this down quite well. There was one studio visit where a guy on the team loaded up a bag full of, and I'm not exaggerating, like 16 pairs of horrible socks. Just really horrible, like
socks.
Why
that doesn't even work as a kind of a promotional item because they're not usually seen.
No, so I was like, no, I don't want this. I've got to go to the airport. I'm not carrying this on the fucking, I didn't say that, but I said, no, I don't want it. It's all right, fine. You good to keep your socks, it's fine. I mean, you wouldn't let me leave without them. So I took them and they're in a bin in an airport somewhere now. It's like on a plane with a big fucking bag of socks for 7 hours or whatever.
What is it about the duration of the flight that makes the socks harder and harder?
I don't know.
It's the knowledge are there.
It's knowing they're there for sure. Yeah. And, I don't know. I should have used the trick there and just left it behind one of their chairs. Why are all these socks behind this chair, Jim? I thought
I almost turned down, a hoodie, which is quite an extravagant gift, on a trip. And then I saw it and actually it's the best hoodie I've ever owned.
So you're wearing it now?
No, I'm not.
You are wearing a Dota one right now.
I'm wearing a Dota hoodie right now. I bought this. It's right there. It's the grey Ubisoft Shanghai hoodie. Okay. It's the most comfortable hoodie I have ever owned. Thanks, Eves.
I had a Halo 3 hoodie, which I treasured actually.
I tell you what. So I feel like we've answered the question not at all because we just talked about things we resent.
Insert coin do okay-ish kind of. They do the kind of gaming stuff that has subtle references in it that only in the know, and it looks like just a sort of graphic stuff if you don't know it.
Yeah.
So I think that fits the bill.
I think that probably does from a technical point of view if you want to answer the question directly and helpfully, Alex.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, good job.
I think it's healthy to have a range of t-shirts that are just only at home stuff. And I've got like some sports t-shirts and just stuff I've bought at gigs and stuff that is just purely for wearing around the house. That's quite nice actually. Yeah, that's good. I wouldn't go out.
I think there's a sort of, like one of the, if at least during my time on PC Gamer, if there was a sort of health bar, like a Doom or Wolfenstein style health bar for the magazine, it would be how much effort have I put into what I'm wearing and how close to game stashes have become. So like right before deadline and I'm sad is I am now wearing the APB t-shirt. Whereas start of deadline and I feel fresh faced and respect myself is I'm wearing a shirt.
Yeah.
So that has a function, I suppose. I think I quite like subtle kind of little cosplay touches. I quite like, sort of dressing to a theme, if you were going to do it rather than like a particular piece of merch. Because I think...
So when you're wearing your APB t-shirt, you also put a pair of kind of very baggy combat trousers.
No, I mean, I've never done this, but I quite like the idea of doing it. Like, so dressing in a way that sort of signals that you like a particular game, but in a way that actually just sort of constructs a costume out of what you're wearing to some extent. I think
this is frightening me.
Really? Why?
Because it makes me think that you go out trying to look like Geralt of Rivia now and then.
Geralt of Rivita, the protagonist of
Riviera Islands, where you get the best merch from.
No, what I mean is that, if you, I don't know, some subtle touch to you, I don't know, just wear a karate gi. You're Ryu now. Congratulations.
I bet there are so many dojos and kind of karate lessons where people just come in as Ryu or want to become Ryu.
Aren't they all Ryu? I mean, Ryu is just dressed for karate, right? He's just a man who...
He must have some quite casual lounging about the
I guess
house.
He's put his belt on his forehead.
He's got a lounging gi that he deploys in his off.
Yeah. I mean, but like, honestly, like, how would you tell if someone in a karate dojo was cosplaying Ryu?
It's the headband.
From Street Fighter. The headband, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll probably
and the
do
rip
it.
bits.
Yeah.
Rip bits.
And then the rip bits.
Yeah. And the throwing things at people.
Fireballs. Yeah.
Exactly. I feel like, I'm pretty, like...
I think that there's a tension in the question and versus sort of our kind of thing where we kind of live in gaming circles, so we don't need to identify. We'd probably prefer not to identify ourselves publicly because we feel fairly satisfied, I suppose, would be sort of socially by being knowing that we're in a group, Whereas kind of nerds. outside that, I can understand intellectually that you'd want to. I suppose it's the interest that I had, like between the ages of, I don't know, 15 and 25 in wearing band t-shirts. Like it was just, a way of identifying like-minded people.
Yeah, right. Tell you what's good for this: pins.
Yeah.
I was in CEX the other day, ridding myself of about 15 years worth of games all at once, which is a really satisfying thing to do for 30 quid. That pile there is stuff that unfortunately has to be kind of recycled because it's all PC games. Physical PC games. Remember those? When they die, they,
no resale value.
Use the code.
No resale value whatsoever, yeah. And then a few Xbox things that I'm either keeping or getting rid of. So, but yeah, got rid of about 15 years worth of games, at once in return for a really big peanut.
How much was it? How much did you get?
Probably got 70 quid in the end. Not too bad. Like, it's like, I'm going to get God of War probably because I haven't played it yet. Something like that. It's fine. Like, relative to the amount of investment I would get out of all of those Xbox games I'm never going to play again. Yeah, it's fine. But obviously, I mean, maybe that's a bit of a nerd-friendly environment as well because it's a CEX. But it was nice to look across the counter and see someone who just on their sort of jacket just had a little Monster Hunter pin, and I recognized it because it was one of the, I can't remember what creature it was, but it was one of the mini-map icons for a particular monster for the Monster Hunter universe, which must be something that Capcom sell. But it was that nice little moment of like, oh, Monster Hunter, right? And it was subtle enough to pass notice, I think. It's just a badge on a jacket. But they certainly identified me as a fellow video game enthusiast. And I didn't mention it at all, and our transaction remained professional.
You didn't meet any kind of eye contact?
No, didn't make eye contact. They were at work, and I was in a hurry, so I didn't actually engage any kind of social, I didn't act as social lubricant in any meaningful way, but it happened, and it could happen better. That's all the questions we've got. Unless we have any more on how to identify yourself to your fellow video gamers in the wild.
It's like little perspex little kind of thing we can write a name of a game on.
A perspex thing you can write the name of a game on?
What, like a sort of name badge?
You hold it up, yeah. Or
just
like an FBI kind of...
handwritten.
That's it, Paddy.
I love Sonic 2.
Make your own badge that says, I like Sonic the Hedgehog on it. See how
Maybe
that
you
goes?
can also draw Sonic.
You could draw Sonic. At which point you've made your own Sonic badge. And you are speaking to 8-year-old Chris here quite directly. Tom, anything left in the tank? We've discovered what the bottom of Alex's barrel looks like.
No, I quite like the idea of I kind of like a flap open FBI badge that you can flash it.
What would it say? What would it say on it?
Federal Bureau of
FBG Gaming.
Just
of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
It's Sonic the Hedgehog has to be in all of this iconography. Like, it's the only one that's allowed, and it's the only one that gamers recognise. So I think that you have to be careful about that with your t-shirts. It's got to be a Sonic with a hedgehog on it somewhere. It could be about God of War, but there's got to be a Sonic on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're not a gamer if you don't like Sonic.
Don't worry about the fact that Sonic is about to become an even more cursed intellectual property thanks to the new 3D CGI film that's going to come out.
Oh god, yeah,
with a hideous rendition of
what you could
Sonic
consider
Hedgehog.
what you could consider a knuckle tat.
And
the problem with this is you can't. Both the words Sonic and Hedgehog are longer than the 4 knuckles that you traditionally get knuckle tats on, but you can get Sonk and Head.
Sonk. One of us.
Exactly. And that'll do it for anyone who really understands. They'll know that. If you can, if you lay your hands down on the counter of that CEX and they look down and see Sonk Hedge, I think that might also mean something in Swedish. So it's, it's,
you can punch him.
Exactly. How dare you?
Between that cursed Sonic movie and Detective Pikachu, we're entering a time where beloved video game characters are going to become things I see on screen that I want to kill in Bloodborne.
So hang on. So are you anti?
Oh, you can't say that about Pikachu.
Not Pikachu himself, but the mime, like all the others.
Yeah,
in it,
but I feel like
heinous.
I do feel like that's a stylistic choice. It reminds me of like
maybe so.
Like I don't know. It's got that kind of. There's something, I think if they do it, I quite like that because for me it's got a kind of Jim Henson-y weirdness to it. Like if they do it right, it could end up in some sort of like Dark Crystal style.
Right.
like territory, which I'd be into.
Whereas Sonic looks like it's like a child has wandered into the lingerie department. It's like sort of, Christ, what have we done?
No, Alex, what does that mean?
It's the feeling as a you've wandered into the wrong part of the shop and like, oh god,
you're in the wrong time. There's a naked anthropomorphic blue hedgehog here.
They've kind of like, we're making Sonic the Hedgehog and then they've wandered into the CGI department and oh fuck, what's happened?
It's so deep in the uncanny valley that I think it is like a Dark Souls level. It's the Blight Town Valley of like they have rendered him to a level of detail that calls attention to the fact that he's naked, but is also sufficiently cartoonish to make it pass muster at first and then make you think, which is the worst. That sort of psychological kind of double process where you initially go cartoon character, then naked man, mutant maybe, help. And then you end up in this sort of middle ground. I hate it a lot and I regret my knuckle tattoos immensely.
They're bleeding slightly.
Yeah, they do that whenever I think about Sonic 2.
Bleed more the closer you get to the release date of that film.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrible curse.
Curse you, Sonk Head.
Hollow.
Right, fine. We managed to dig some fresh earth out of the bottom of that barrel.
That particular coffin.
That is all the questions we have time for. If you'd like to send us a question for next week, you can do so by emailing us at questions@crowbar.com or tweeting us. We can be found on the internet service Twitter at Crate and Crowbar. Thank you as ever to our Patreon supporters whose continued support allows us to honk thus every week. And if you would like to find out more about our Patreon, you can find us at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. This podcast and others like it can be found on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. And don't forget, we've got, my voice is going. Shit, this is going well.
Don't forget.
Stay a while. You can find, our Discord community, who are lovely, on Discord. The link for which is in the show notes for this episode on our website and also in the top bar of that same website, crateandcrowbar.com. I've asked this every week for months. Twitter handles, do we want to do them? Should we make a decision right here, right now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, fine. Alex?
Rotational. I am on.
You threw your hat in the ring and it bounced and hit you in the face.
I didn't prepare myself at all. I am rotational. ROTATIONAL.
There's a link in the show notes to whatever it is the fuck Alex just said.
What Alex just did reminded me of what just happened just before I walked into this house to do this podcast, where a perfectly nice dog was just trying to follow me into the house, and a woman was screaming at it, "Get the fuck over here!" like that, and you just gave me a.
You made it sound like Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. Like, get over here!
Get the fuck over here!
So, did it bark?
No, it was
okay,
quiet.
because today a dog has been barking outside my house for 4 hours today. It couldn't work because I tried, but every 10 seconds, in the distance. Not a big bark, not a big woof, just a sort of, without fail, every 10 seconds or so. So I did entertain the thought for a while, that dog's trying to tell me something. So if a dog's trying to get in the house, pass on whatever message it has.
Maybe so, yeah.
Whatever that woman doesn't want me to know.
There are 96 lies in this story.
Yeah, exactly.
We must have picked them all.
Shadows lie 96 times. That was a joke. There's no home for that joke, but it was there somewhere else in the episode. Who knows where it could fit in? I'll edit it somewhere. It's fine. Tom, what's your Twitter handle?
It's at PCG Ludo Aludio.
Great. And I'm at C Thurston, that's CTHURSTEN.
Thanks for listening,
everybody.